In the face of the mounting crisis of uncompleted property projects and the never-ending wait for property handovers, a chorus of disquiet has been growing among homeowners.
The wave of mass defaults is spreading rapidly. At first, we thought it was just an issue with 10 stalled projects, but within a few days, more than 200 project owners collectively announced they were stopping loan repayments. Will this wave of defaults continue to spread? How much more is hidden beneath the tip of the iceberg? Could this potentially shake the rule of the Chinese Communist Party?
Astonishingly, in a mere matter of days, the count of halted loans for unfinished real estate projects surpassed 200, with owners of 245 stranded projects issuing a collective proclamation of loan suspension. Is this merely the proverbial tip of the iceberg? Could this trend continue its march across the country, threatening financial stability and social order? This recent phenomenon can be traced back to June of the previous year, when the halt of loan declarations for unfinished property projects in Henan province spread like wildfire. Within a single month, it found resonating echoes in more than a dozen provinces nationwide: Liaoning, Jiangsu, Jiangxi, Yunnan, Hubei, Shanxi, Guangdong, Guangxi, Hebei, Anhui, Shandong. The figure at that time reached a staggering total of 110 halted loan projects. Fast forward to July of the current year, and the count in Wuhan alone stands at 245 unfinished property projects, joining this wave of loan suspension, a number which is rising at an alarming rate. This is Evergrande's Era City in Wuhan. Prospective buyers were initially treated to helicopter tours of the development, leading to a rush of 20,000 deposits on the opening day. Yet the project soon grounded to a halt and has remained unfinished. Many young couples who envisaged these units as their marital homes have seen their dreams dissipate and the properties still not delivered. Since 2021, the Chinese housing market has been strained under the weight of both the pandemic and stringent government regulations. A growing number of private real estate companies, inclusive of industry giants such as Evergrande and Sunac, are wrestling with disintegrated capital chains. These corporate troubles have spilled over into society, manifesting in a national epidemic of unfinished housing developments. According to the data gathered by CRIC China, by the close of 2021, undelivered problematic projects within 24 principal Chinese cities covered a staggering area of roughly 246.8 million square meters. This represents 10% of the total new home transaction area for that year. The crisis is most severe in Zhengzhou, where nearly one-third of the new housing projects have been abandoned, impacting over 600,000 residents. Here, 8 in every 100 people have invested in a stranded project, with the majority linked to Evergrande. Investigations into the origins of the issue reveal a pattern of reckless overexpansion. Developers have been found to rapidly sell off projects in prime locations after laying the foundations, with part or all of the borrowed funds being illegitimately funneled into their pockets for the acquisition of other properties and ventures. Overstretched in terms of debt and land acquisitions, the breaking of capital chains has left real estate giants such as Evergrande and Sunac unable to fulfill their obligations, resulting in vast numbers of uncompleted buildings. Theoretically, the funds for property purchases should be placed into trust accounts. However, to maintain their relationships with developers, banks have allowed the top 100 local real estate enterprises to withdraw funds from these accounts. As a result, when a housing project fails, many homeowners are left helpless, staring at an empty account with little option but to turn to the courts for aid. A handful of court rulings have favored the home buyers in a tangled web of halted loans and unfinished buildings. A significant decree by the Supreme People's Court of China on December 3, 2020, affirmed that homeowners should not bear the full brunt of the risk associated with uncompleted buildings. In circumstances where developers have failed to deliver on their obligations, they should refund the principal and interest of the home purchase loan to both the bank and the buyer. Yet despite this ruling, the crisis is escalating. The most conservative estimates suggest that there are 4 million unfinished units nationwide, with a total value nearing 8 trillion yuan. If mortgage loans represent just 60% of this sum, homeowners are still confronted with repayments nearing 5 trillion yuan. As the Chinese economy continues to struggle and the liquidity of private real estate firms stagnates, the number of unfinished projects continues to rise. It's a scenario that is causing growing concern within the Chinese Communist Party, fearful that a rising tide of homeowners of unfinished buildings may resort to class actions. If substantial proportions of loans turn bad, China's major banks will endure a significant hit to their credibility. Indeed, this eventually could even pose a formidable threat to the financial underpinning of the Chinese Communist Party. As a result, the Chinese government has been proactive, utilizing media outlets to broadcast a pointed message. A worrying trend has emerged where owners of incomplete properties have collectively opted to cease loan repayments, triggering an increased number of owners to follow suit. If unchecked, this could deliver a severe blow to the real estate market, making property sales even more challenging and potentially compromising the stability of the entire financial system. This public strategy is aimed at mitigating the growing tide of halted repayments at a grassroots level.
Right now, all ordinary folks can do is stop taking out loans and stop repaying them. It's not that we want to break the contract, but if the house isn't finished, we're not paying back the loans. Once the house meets the delivery conditions specified in the contract, we'll continue repaying the loans. We've got no choice here. As for the credit system, all our money's already in it. Who'd have extra cash for all sorts of consumption. Besides, if credit ratings matter, you guys should first deal with the illegal personnel within your banks, like Exu Jiayan and Jia Yueting, who are exploiting the common people. How come those guys aren't affected at all? This credit system is clearly taking advantage of us regular folks.
In the face of such precarious circumstances, public discontent has started to flare. One school of thought espoused by many is that their only recourse is to stop repayments. They are not advocating for the full breach of the property purchase agreements, but rather resolutely affirm that should their properties remain incomplete, they will cease repayments. Once the houses are complete, they will resume repayments in line with the stipulations of the original contract.
The nationwide real estate loan default wave has officially begun. Many construction projects across the country have halted, leaving buildings unfinished and unable to be delivered on time. But homeowners still have to pay their mortgages. With their backs against the wall, more and more homeowners across the country are publicly declaring their intention to collectively stop repaying their loans. Ordinary people have finally been pushed to the point of ripping off the mask with banks and developers. According to online data, unfinished housing projects are popping up all over the country, in provinces such as Jiangxi, Hubei, Hunan, Henan, Hebang, Henan, Hebei, Liaoning, Chongqing, and so on. Henan is the province with the most unfinished projects.
Several owners voiced their predicament starkly. They can barely afford to put food on the table and thus are indifferent to the threat of banks freezing their assets, which they claim are non-existent. Neither are they fearful of being blacklisted by credit institutions, as they don't possess the financial capacity for any meaningful consumption. Their monetary reserves have been drained. Many are caught in a rent mortgage double bind, shouldering the cost of a rented home while also servicing a mortgage for a home they can't live in. Add this to the financial obligations of raising children and supporting the elderly. It becomes apparent why they see no alternative but to suspend repayments. With the financial resources for the next 30 years already committed, their desperation is palpable. After all, there are not that many 30 years in one's life. The Chinese government is clearly conscious that they are at fault. In an unprecedented move at last year's Politburo meeting on July the 29th, they committed to ensuring the completion and delivery of unfinished real estate projects. To this end, a special fund of 400 billion yuan has been set aside, projected to provide for 4 million households. However, the extent of the crisis is such that this measure can only provide a partial solution, given that the number of unfinished properties attributable to Evergrande alone stands at a staggering 1.5 million households. While local governments and developers are vigorously publicizing the guaranteed delivery of buildings, neither official institutions nor real estate research bodies have released any specifics regarding the nationwide progress of these efforts. By late May 2023, the B2B construction information service platform Banyan Construction Network had completed a study into the progress of 1,114 guaranteed delivery projects across the country. Their sobering report indicated that a mere 34% of these projects had been delivered. Zhengzhou, the city boasting the highest number of unfinished buildings nationwide, and its home province of Henan, have proven to be the slowest in promoting the guaranteed delivery of buildings. As of May 18, 2023, the delivery rate for guaranteed buildings in this region was a mere 11%. Evergrande, the pioneer real estate company that promised guaranteed delivery of buildings, was able to restart 732 projects in 2022, resulting in the delivery of 300,000 units. Yet this constitutes only half of the 600,000 units that had been slated for delivery at the start of the previous year. In March of this year, Evergrande conceded that it would need to secure 250 to 300 billion yuan in financing over the next 3 years to fully address the company's issue of incomplete buildings. There are many interconnected reasons for the painstakingly slow rollout of building completion guarantees. Over recent years, property developers have exhausted all their quality assets for collateral purposes, leaving them with only substandard assets. This predicament has complicated their ability to borrow from designated funds. Furthermore, the complex auditing process, stretching over at least 8 months from application to funds transfer, has impeded the full allocation of the 400 billion yuan special fund from the central government. The initiation of construction projects, hence, remains elusive. Simultaneously, commercial banks are confronting a conundrum in providing supportive funding. In theory, real estate developers, upon securing special loans from policy banks, can apply for twice the amount of funding from commercial banks. However, this theoretical scenario seldom translates into reality. A prominent property firm in Henan province, despite receiving over 3.5 billion yuan in special funds and having over 1 billion yuan worth of undeveloped land parcels to serve as collateral, could only secure a few tens of millions of yuan for a single project from commercial banks. For many firms, it is difficult to meet the stringent requirements commercial banks have regarding the loan direction, repayment, and the borrower's asset quality. The Chinese government's initial blueprint envisaged that the special fund dedicated to ensuring building completion, supplemented by increased debt and credibility from real estate developers, would rejuvenate their cash flows, ensuring the completion of unfinished projects. However, the result is that developers are unable to procure bank loans, compounded by a significant dip in non-bank financing. According to the China Index Academy, non-bank financing for real estate companies witnessed a sharp decline of 16% year-on-year, amounting to 404 billion yuan in the first half of 2023. Credit bonds saw a 7% year-on-year dip, and trust financing fell by a staggering 70% due to rampant defaults. Further complicating matters, overseas financing has experienced an ongoing downward trend, down 90% last year and a further 35% year-on-year. Foreign investors have, it seems, grown reluctant about investing in Chinese real estate firms. Simultaneously, the government has allowed a few major state-owned real estate firms like Vanke, Poly, and the China Merchants to raise funds in the stock market. However, the deflated stock prices of these companies and even lower prices of other real estate firms have stifled the industry's capacity to raise funds directly from the stock market. Real estate developers find themselves in a precarious balancing act, unable to secure loans on one hand while grappling with looming repayments on the other. July and September of this year are anticipated to be peak periods for the maturation of property developers' debts, with approximately 900 billion yuan due for repayment. Even Poly Real Estate, a state-owned entity, would find such a colossal sum daunting, not to mention firms like Vanke and Country Garden. The inability to service these debts punctually could force many real estate developers into selling their properties at lower prices, leading to a stagnation in the second-hand market and potentially a catastrophic collapse in the overall property prices. In these circumstances, loan default issues are not confined to unfinished building projects. Inhabited properties are also in the crosshairs. Falling property prices have diminished the value of collateral, resulting in an increase in loan amounts and subsequently monthly repayments. Amid economic downturns, sustained unemployment and wage cuts, numerous homeowners may struggle to service their monthly payments, thereby sparking a larger wave of defaults. The loan default problem is but the tip of the iceberg. The local government financing vehicles, LGFVs, which have treated real estate as quality collateral over the past few years, face a more severe issue. With falling house prices, the depreciating value of loan collateral could render LGFV borrowers incapable of repaying their debts, culminating in a massive default, a dilemma far graver than anticipated. The International Monetary Fund estimated in February that by the end of 2022, China's implicit LGFV debt had reached an astonishing 66 trillion yuan. Against this backdrop, two significant news items surfaced on July the 4th. Bloomberg quoted insiders who claimed that China's large state-owned banks were offering 25-year super long-term loans, totaling $9 trillion to local government financing platforms with interest-free conditions for the first 5 years. While the Chinese government promptly refuted this report, the likelihood of its accuracy remains quite palpable in the present context. Subsequently, on July the 5th, Goldman Sachs, the titan of American investment banks, unveiled a comprehensive and sobering analysis exceeding 100 pages on the Chinese banking industry. This document ominously downgraded the equity ratings of 3 of the 5 major banks: Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, Agricultural Bank of China, Bank of Communications, and also that of 2 commercial banks, Industrial Bank and Huaxia Bank, to a rather bleak sell rating. This report highlighted the perilous position these banks find themselves in due to the excessive exposure to local debt, a substantial proportion of which has tragically turned into bad debt. So how should one interpret these revelations from such esteemed sources such as Bloomberg and Goldman Sachs? Industry pundits have suggested that if China's 6 powerhouse state-owned banks were to directly shoulder the weight of local government bad debts, it would be a significant blow to the Chinese banking sector, which operates on narrow profit margins. In a scenario where the industry faces a sudden interest-free period of 5 years, the damage could be incalculable. Goldman Sachs' report, on the other hand, seems to be piling on the misery, insinuating that Wall Street is in the process of withdrawing its investment and is gearing up to short China, a staggering proposition representing an immense challenge to the Chinese financial system, which has been a paragon of stability for over 2 decades. The Chinese Communist Party, it appears, had anticipated this eventually and conducted internal assessments. They are acutely aware that the West is poised to take action, and as per the CCP's evocative terminology, this will result in tumultuous waves and a raging storm. In light of the current circumstances, President Xi Jinping has overseen a substantial reshuffle at the apex of China's financial system. There has been a change at the helm of the People's Bank of China, and sweeping shifts have occurred within the National Social Security Fund and the People's Insurance Company. This essentially translates into Xi Jinping having an iron grip over the financial domain, providing him with the autonomy to implement any necessary measures. Simultaneously, Wall Street, always the opportunistic player, is likely to capitalize on this predicament to intensify its pursuit of Chinese assets. This includes even the overseas assets held by the CCP and, in a sense, the entire Chinese financial system. Forecasts predict that the Chinese financial system may soon find itself in the throes of a fierce storm.